Good morning, everybody. So what I'd like to look at today is a couple of psukim towards the end of the parsha. Um, because the nature of Mishpatim is that there's so many mitzvahs, so we can always speak about the juxtaposition of the mitzvahs, but I'm not going to do that. I'd rather take them in their own little, it's kind of like out of context, but just look at each mitzvah on its own. So the Torah says the following: Ki tifgash shor oivcha o chamoro to'eh hashev tishivenu lo. Ki tifga. The word tifga means like you encounter it. It happens. You happen upon the shore, the cow, the bull, the ox of oivcha, of your enemy, or chamoro, or his donkey, to'eh, but he's wandering around somewhere. So what should you do? You know that he's not in the place where he should be, the animal, and so therefore Hashem Tishuvenu, you've got a mitzvah to return that lost animal to its owner. So we know that there's the mitzvah of Hashavas Aveda, of returning lost objects, and it's similar in this way. But here the Torah describes it as if you find the shor oivcha, the shore of your enemy. The next pasuk has a kind of like an adjunct to this, where it says, Ki tir'eh chamor son'acha. If you see the donkey of your enemy, rovetz tachas masao, that it is lying under its burden and it's unable to get up. V'chadalta me'azov lo. And your natural inclination is not to help it. Chadalta la'azov lo. No, azov ta'azov imo. You must help with him. Okay, so let's try and understand what these two psukim are all about. The first one is speaking about returning a lost object of your oivcha, your enemy. The second one is helping soncha, the one who hates you. And so therefore the netziv on this explains that whenever we see the word oyev, and oyev is what he explains as a soneh b'leiv v'lo b'po'ah. It's someone who hates you, but hates you in their heart. They don't do anything about it. They don't negatively impact you in any way. But what they do is that they hate you in your heart, and you know that. However, he says, when you find the word soneh and oyev together, then we have to understand that they're a little bit different. That in this case, that here we're talking about a person who, even though he doesn't do anything to you in an action point of view, the words that he uses, the way he says, he hurts you with words. And so therefore, if that's the case, we can perhaps understand what's going on here on a deeper level. So it comes along and it says, in this case, because the oyev is juxtaposed to the next pasuk, which speaks about the son. So the enemy versus the soneh. He says we're talking about a person who really say very nasty things to you. So why does the Torah have to tell you? Well, it's obvious. We know that from a simple level. Somebody else's things are somewhere, you know who they are. You take them, pick them, and you return them. Why would you not return them in this case? So the Netziv says, you know why you wouldn't return them? Because he knows that the minute he returns those things to the person, then that person is going to say horrible and nasty things. And he says there, and then there's a pasuk. There's a pasuk in Mishnah, in Proverbs, and the pasuk in Proverbs says the following: Kavod la'ish meriv. It is honorable, appropriate, it's kovodik for a person to not go into arguments. V'chol evil yitgala. But every fool, every person who's such a mensch, right, becomes embroiled in machlokes. There's not being embroiled in machlokes. I mean, there's so much in this. But a person who's a kavodish, it's an appropriate thing. Person, there's a certain level of kavod, of honor, of respect that a person has for a person who doesn't embroil themselves in machlokes. On the other hand, a person who is always involved in machlokes is considered to be a fool. So comes along the Netziv, and he says that a person may think that because they know that the guy that they're going to return this large object is going to start fighting with them, they're going to be makayim the pasuk, right? That they don't want to have a fight. So therefore, kavod lish shevet miriv. comes along the Torah and says, no. You've got to give it to him. Tashev teshivenu lo, says the Netziv, hanu leyado, to his hand. Oh, what about the machlokes? What about that value? Says the Netziv, a beautiful idea. Mitzvah lo yada devara. That understand that a person who's fulfilling the mitzvah won't know a devara, and even if this person starts with them, understand if one reacts or responds in an appropriate way, it won't result in a bigger machlokes. So that's an amazing idea that the Netziv is saying that the resistance to returning is to avoid machlokes. Says the Netziv, no, don't just avoid the machlokes, actually go into it. Take the animal, give it back, and understand that only because you're doing it as a mitzvah. And that's important. Not that you're doing it because he's so nasty to me. I'll return his animal. You're doing it because that's the mitzvah. If it's driven by the mitzvah purpose, then and the devar mitzvah devara. Okay. Oh, what about the next pasuk? Now you see you've got this donkey that's under this terrible burden, and it's unable to get up. So says the Netziv, what's the sona here? Sone here, the person who hates you. Mashma belev mamish. Mamish hates you. Mamish, a person that you know hates you. Well, that's a terrible situation to have a person who really hates you, right? So in order to be able to lift this thing up and to help or to take it off or to help the donkey to get back up, has to be done together with the owner. No, it's not the normative sense that a person would go and work with their enemy. Who wants to work with the enemy? It's not something he wants to do. Therefore, that your real instinct is not to assist him, not to help him, because you know that it's just the person hates you. So why should you help him? No, azov tazovimo. The word azov tazov, the word tazov is difficult, and Rashi points it out, and the Tzif points out everybody else. Azov is azivu loshon ezer. Here you have to help him. It's an amazing thing what the Torah is doing, is that the Torah is giving us this exhortation to go beyond our natural feeling towards this person, because we know that when you're going to be doing when you're going to be helping this person, you have to talk to him, you have to help him. And perhaps the Torah is saying, and I haven't seen this, but perhaps what the Torah is saying is that, at the end of the day, if he hates you in his heart, if you show a certain love and care for the other person who may hate you, so then maybe that'll change in the behavior that they will have towards you, and perhaps even in the relationship. I know Natalie, my wife, always tells me that she's got this thing that people who come in to have issues and are trying to, unfortunately, they've been very hurt in whatever way by things that may have happened. So her thing is to try and make them her best friend. How do you do that? Through love, through care, through listening. Okay, so it comes along the Kli Yakar, and the Kli Yakar says on this issue, he says, Lomar Lacha, comes to teach us this concept of that, although you're initially feeling you don't want to help, but the Torah says help. Lomar Lacha, Dafka she'rotze lios imcha b'malachto v'rotze la'akim imcha az ata mechuyev l'sayeh lo. Says that if you will do it with him, v'rotze la'akim imcha, and you're prepared to do it with him, then you must help him. Aval im yoshev loy. But if that person is just going to sit by the side, he's going to be the supervisor. So, no, you have to do it. Then what? You don't have to help that much. So if that's the case, so maybe that's why it says that the word lo means to him. How do you help to him? It doesn't mean imo. You're allowed to remove yourself from the situation when he's not prepared to help. It's not your job to do the work, but rather to be part of that solution to help. Now listen to this. He says here an amazing thing. Teshuva al miktas aniyim is an answer to many aniyim, to poor people, b'nei imenu, that are part of our people. That totally put themselves dependent on the tzibur, on the community. And they're not prepared to do any work. Even if they can. Well, we know there are many people in society that can't do, but there are people that can. But nonetheless, they make themselves totally dependent on society. They could do something to assuage the way that the quoting from Psukim, the lack of food in their homes. And then those people, even though they could be productive people, they nonetheless they shriek terrible things because nobody's helping them. That's not what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted. Ki im azov tazov imo. Hakem takim imo. That it has to be together with that person. Ki ani yaseh. The person has to do everything that they can in their ability. La asois ve'im kol ze lo tasig that. No matter how hard they try, they're still not able to do it. As chayav. Then every single person has to assist them, going to lift them up, give them what they need. But you have to help even up to 100 times, as long as the way the Nativ is saying. That's interesting. What does that mean? One doesn't help a person who is able to help themselves but isn't. But it doesn't mean that. I think what it means is that there's a limit to what one has to do. One must try and avoid total dependency in situations where there shouldn't be total dependency. Sometimes we create dependency relationships because we're so busy assisting that we don't realize that if we would maybe take a step back and allow people to fail a bit and actually to do what they need to do. The same thing happens, I think, with our children. Sometimes we support them all the time. We don't give them that opportunity to fail. And the opportunity to fail, where they then have to pick themselves up. That's the mitzvah. That's the education. It's an education that happens on ourselves with people that perhaps we have a certain level of animosity towards. It's an education that must be with those who are helping those who are impoverished and the impoverished themselves, that they also need to try and find a place to help themselves. And of course, a situation in educating our children and our families. Wish everybody a beautiful day.